everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have my June wrap-up. So in the month of June, I did read 13 books, which was also 3,646 pages. I did do the Clear Your Shit Readathon, and I did actually finish the entire bingo board. I will say which books fill what prompts as we get there, but I was very happy with that fact, especially since I did end up switching like one or two things out for other things, but I did finish the whole bingo board. Before we get into that though, we are going to run through some of my stats. So of those 13 books, 8 of them were physical, 3 were ebooks, and 2 were ARCs. For age groups, 8 were adult, 3 were YA, and 2 were middle grade. And then for my star ratings, I did have 1 DNF, 2 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 1 5-star read. So we will be going from lowest rated to highest rated like we've been doing all year this year. I actually do like the way that this sort of comes out, where I get to work my way up to my absolute favorite book of the month. I used to do it where I was doing it chronologically. If you liked that better, please just let me know. I will always consider going back to that system if more people don't like the way that I do it now. But personally, I like working my way up to my favorite. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is my DNF. I DNF'd The Weird of Hali Innsmouth by John Michael Greer. I actually read this because I did a What's in a Name vlog. I will leave it linked down below, where I was reading 3 different books, all by authors with the last name of Greer. And this is one that I wanted to like. It's supposed to be a fantasy with tentacles. However, I just do not think this is a book I should be reading. This is a book that follows our main character of Owen, who is in college, I think doing master's degree or something like that, about H.P. Lovecraft. He's in the middle of writing his thesis or dissertation, I don't remember which one. And so a lot of this book was him going to class, him going to the library, him writing his paper, and it had a mix of like very vague, like, I went here, I went here, I went here, and like we don't get much information, and then very specific. Like sometimes we went to class with him and the teacher would be like, here, you guys read this, let's talk about this, and then people would have a whole conversation for multiple pages about some philosophical or something discussion that I had no idea about. And so the actual writing style of it wasn't horrible, but I didn't understand the big juxtaposition between some stuff being very vague and some stuff being very specific, and the specifics were not things that, like, I wasn't in that class. I don't know what they did last week and why we're now discussing the philosophical ramifications of whatever this was. Like, I don't know. So I actually DNF'd this book at 44%, which I feel like is enough to know that I'm not gonna get it. And the main reason I DNF'd it is because we had actually just started getting to the potentially weird fantasy part of it. Like everything else before then was basically school, but they mentioned this guy who has like a hat and rings, and he's a mysterious entity for a few chapters before we actually meet him. And then Owen is like, oh, it's such and such from Lovecraft, and like I'm just supposed to know who that is. The thing is, I don't know anything about Lovecraft. I was hoping to have a little bit more to go off of and still be able to enjoy it without that, but I really don't think so. I think if you're really into H.P. Lovecraft and have read like all of the Lovecraft mythos stuff, maybe you would like this because it is very specific in that way, but that means it's not for me. Moving into the 2 3 stars, the next one I have here is Kingpin by W.S. Greer. So this is another one that I talked about in that reading vlog, and it is an Italian mafia romance. I talked about this, like I said, in the reading vlog, but it does not feel like a romance. It had a lot of actual mafia stuff, lots of murder and killing and torture, and like they did a lot of mafia dealings. The actual romance that was supposed to be here didn't give me enough build up to it. The writing style was actually not bad. Like I would be willing to potentially read more by this author. I'm just not too sure if the books are going to be for me. This is a male author writing romance. And I feel like maybe that could have been why. It's an, I'm assuming, cis straight man writing a romance that's male-female romance, and probably hit a lot of things that he would like to see in romance, but not a lot of things that I would like to see in romance. And then one other thing that made me a little bit about the book is it does actually start when our two main characters are 11, and then we have an interlude where they go up to 13, and an interlude where they go up to 15, and then we get to the adult stuff later. And I'm not saying that you can't start a romance book with kids and have like the friendship and stuff grow. However, we started getting hot and heavy with like sex scenes between these kids when they were 15. And even though they are both 15, it definitely did not feel like a sex scene that should have been written between kids. It was just not something that I wanted. If this book would have pushed it up a couple years, like 13, 15, 17, I feel like is not as squicky as 15 for that kind of stuff. But that also means that those ages were where most of the actual romantic like progression was supposed to be, and so I just did not feel it. But again, not good for me, not bad whatsoever if that's what you're looking for, like especially like the mafia stuff. So yeah, 3 stars. The next 3 stars I have is Death Note Black Edition Volume 4 by Tsugumi Oba. I have actually given all other Death Note Black Editions, so the first 3 of these, which I guess is like the first 6 volumes of this, 5 stars. I absolutely loved them. This one, however, caught up to the point where I have actually DNF'd the anime twice. And yeah, so this is comprised of volumes 7 and 8. Volume 7, I feel like, is the end of one arc, and it ends in a way that I do not like. And then volume 8 basically starts a whole nother arc. And mangas definitely do this, where they have arcs in their story where like you can definitely tell that like one arc has ended and another one is starting. But this new arc has introduced characters that I don't care about because they weren't in the first 7 books of the series. And it also has like jumped forward in time. So it feels like a completely different type of story. And I'm not feeling it all that much. Like, it's not horrible. Like, I'm not hating it. Probably because I knew a little bit of what to expect with the end of the arc, because I don't like the way it ends, but I watched the anime, and then once I got to that part, I basically DNF'd it. So I knew what to expect from it. I definitely do want to still continue with the series because I only have 2 more Black editions left, but I don't think I like the manga necessarily any more than the anime. And yeah, I'm not attached to any of these characters anymore with the new arc. I'm just not feeling it. I'm very indifferent to it, I should say. And this Death Note Black Edition does actually fulfill the prompt of candles for the Clear Your Shit Readathon, which is to read a book with a black or white cover. This has both. Then moving into 3.5 stars, I have 2. The first one is The Old Bay King by Donnie Goodman. This is a 15-page horror short story about crab fishermen. I actually gave this 3.5 stars because I am curious about more from this author. The writing style was pretty good, but the fact that it's only 15 minutes, like I literally sat down and finished it in one sitting while Presley was sleeping on me, so like I was trapped. And then even after I finished the story, I think Presley was still sleeping on me. So it was a very nice, like, quick read. The writing style was good. I just feel like it was too short, and I knew what I was getting into. It's a 15-page story. There is lots of blood and gore in this one, so if you're looking for like more bloody, gory horror, that's great. But I wanted more like answers or reasons why things were happening. Like, that is one thing that I'm always looking for with almost any book, but especially like horror stuff. I want something that at least has some sort of explanation. Even if the explanation is out of this world, I want a little bit of something, some reason why something happened. And I know that doesn't always happen, but the writing style was good enough that I definitely want to read more by Donnie Goodman. This actually is a short story that was released by itself earlier this year, I want to say, and then within the last couple months, a short story collection was released with this in it called The Razor Blades in My Head, and it has this short story plus a few other ones, and some of them sound like really creepy, and so I definitely want to pick up more work by him. But if you're looking for, like I said, a bloody, short, easy horror story, this is probably the one. And then the other 3.5 stars I have is The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. This one is the first in a new series, and I gave it, like I said, 3.5 stars. This one follows our main character of Ropa, who is 14 years old, and she can see the dead, like the ghosts of the dead, and she is trying to sort of work and hustle. She doesn't go to school anymore by delivering messages from the dead to their family members for cash. I really did like how snarky our main character was, and I liked the fact that this is some sort of alternate Earth. Like, she is in Scotland, but things aren't quite normal. People do know that there's ghosts. People do know that there's people that deliver messages. There's something to do with a king instead of a queen, potentially. I don't know. I want more world building. Like, I want to know more about this world. But also the whole, like, big problem in this book is that there is a boy missing, and Ropa is supposed to go and try and, like, figure out what happened to him. The thing is, she's 14 years old and she doesn't give a shit. So it didn't feel like we actually had any urgency or any care about the main problem of the book. Like, that was supposed to be the main problem to be solved, but she kept doing other things that didn't feel as important because she didn't care. And that's, again, a character thing, but because of that, I wasn't feeling as connected to the main problem of the story. Also, the ending of the story was a little bit abrupt. Like, I sort of saw it coming potentially, and then when we got there, there were no consequences for the ending. It didn't feel like we had a good resolution for it. However, the writing style is very interesting. Like I said, I do like how snarky Ropa is, so I would love to see more from her again. And like I said, it's the first book in a series, so I will probably pick up the next one. Also, the author has said that he doesn't have a sexuality picked out for Ropa yet in some sort of like questionnaire on Goodreads, but I definitely felt some sapphic vibes with her and another character who is in the book, and I feel like that's the direction it should be going in if we do get any sort of potential romantic relationship in the future. I don't know. She's 14. That could be the time where she discovers her sexuality. It could not. We'll see. But I felt definite vibes. And for the Clear Your Shit Readathon, this book I put in my free space. Now, I have 5 4-star reads. The first 2 are Long Lost, Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Matthew Ehrman and Lisa Sturl. Matthew Ehrman is the writer, Lisa Sturl is the artist. I'm a little bit conflicted on this. The art style is really, really good, really, really creepy, because this actually is sort of like a horror comic bind up graphic novel type of thing, and this is the entire series, which is why I have both here. I read the entire thing in like one day, I think. This is about 2 sisters who are sort of estranged from each other, and they are going back to their hometown to find out what happened to their mother because she is missing, because a weird, creepy horror entity almost tells them they have to. So they are going back sort of against their wills to try and figure out what happened to their mother. They're also estranged from their mother, so there is some talk about, you know, family and this kind of stuff. The actual art style and stuff, like I said, very creepy, very horror. I loved that aspect of it. My biggest issue why this is not a 5 stars is the writing, the dialogue. A lot of it did not make sense. Like, structurally, syntax stuff did not make sense. And I don't know if it was supposed to be like just the way that they talk to each other, but in writing, trying to read it as like dialogue bubbles, it didn't quite work. And so I got lost a couple times trying to figure out who was saying what or what they were actually trying to say. But if you just sort of go through it and mostly focus on the pictures and the drawings and the sequence of that, it is very, very creepy, and I really, really enjoyed that. And for this one, I used it for Bag of Teeth for the Clear Your Shit Readathon, which was for a creepy book, obviously. The next 4 stars I have here is Deltora Shadowlands by Emily Rhoda. This is a sequel series to Deltora Quest, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite, like, fantasy middle grades, like, I guess more like old fantasy middle grades, because I remember Deltora Quest like coming out around my childhood somewhere. That one has 7 or 8 books in that series. This one has 3, and I ended up giving this a 4 instead of a full 5, like I gave Deltora Quest, because it didn't quite live up to what I remember of that series. And it's been a couple years since I've reread that series, but I've read it multiple times. I absolutely love it, and it's the same characters in here. It just didn't feel as connected. I think part of it is because of the fact that there's only 3 books. Part of it is also that we didn't have as much of the riddles and puzzles that I absolutely loved in the first series. Like, the first series was so clever and creative about some of the adventures they go on. Each book is a different adventure, but they're all connected into one overarching storyline of like trying to find gems for a magical belt. And they meet people and creatures that you have to like solve riddles and like figure out what's going on. And that happened once in here. Everything else just sort of felt like going and bridging the gap between the first series and the third series that I actually didn't know there was one, but there is. So this definitely, I guess, had middle book syndrome, or I guess middle series syndrome, because it just felt more of like that bridge in between. It's only 3 books. I did still like the characters. They just didn't have as much life as before, and I really, really missed those fun puzzle elements that I remember from the first series. But that means I do need to pick up the 3rd series of this sooner rather than later, which I think is like Deltora Dragons or something like that. I could be wrong, but there is a 3rd series that goes with this, and this one bridged the gap from the first one to the 3rd one. And for the Clear Your Shit Readathon, this fit for the Cauldron prompt, which was to read a book featuring a magical object. In this one, they are going on a quest to find, I think it was a magical flute. The next 4 stars I have here is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is the 3rd and final book that I read during the What's in a Name Greer vlog, so I will leave that, again, linked down below for you. This one was a huge surprise. I actually thought this was going to be the one I was going to like the least out of all the books, and it was the one I liked the most. This is literary fiction, contemporary, adult, like stuff that I would probably never have picked up except for I wanted to read it for this vlog. And it does have some stuff that I didn't like. It is very wordy, sort of metaphoric and lyrical, and it definitely has our main character looking back to his past, his memories, quite a bit, especially near the beginning of the book. And that's all stuff that I don't necessarily like. Also, many of the chapters are 30 or 40 pages long, and so it felt very tedious to get through. But the more I got into the story, the more I kept reading, the more there were scenes that just like gripped me and I wanted to know more. And by the end of the book, I was sort of in love with what happened. I might have to reread this eventually and see if my feelings toward the beginning of the book change, but I ended up giving this a 4 stars. This does follow our main character of Arthur Less, who is like going to be turning 50, I think, within the next few weeks. And his ex-boyfriend sends him an invitation to his wedding. And so in order to get around that and not go to that wedding, he decides to accept literary events all around the world. And so he goes to speaking events, he goes to like just like a party and like different things like that, just to sort of get away. So it's almost a take on Around the World in 80 Days, but it's all about Arthur Less and him growing older and being a white gay man and that kind of stuff. And I don't know, there was just something about it by the end of the book. I really, really enjoyed it, even though it has a lot of things I would not have liked. And I literally would not have picked this up, because I've seen it multiple times in the bookstore. I would not have picked this up without my reading vlog. So I'm overall very happy with this, and it did also fit a prompt for the Clear Your Shit Readathon, which was Athema, which was to read a book in a genre you don't normally read. The last 4 stars I have here is going to be Prime Deceptions by Valerie Valdez. This is a sequel to Chilling Effect, which I think I actually gave 4 stars last year. That is a quite high 4 stars. This is a lower 4 stars. The Chilling Effect book definitely had vibes of like Firefly and Mass Effect, and they were going on missions to try and like get money to save our main character Eva's sister from the Fridge, which is a crime syndicate. And in this one, we basically had one major mission, which was to find one of the crewmates' brothers. And they did have a couple stops at like little planets, but by the halfway point, or even a little bit before that of this book, we have one major mission on one planet. And it's basically Pokemon in space, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it did feel a little bit more tedious than the previous book. It also felt a little bit more like it was taking its time to get to anything important. But I really did like the ending of it. It brought a whole bunch more action in and a little bit more mystery. And so there is supposed to be some sort of third book for this. I don't know if it's coming out this year or next year, but I do want to pick it up. This is a Cuban-American author who writes, I believe, a Cuban-American protagonist, even though I don't think our protagonist was born on Earth. I don't know how that works, but I do love the subtle weaving of like the Spanish dialogue into here as well. I really do love the characters in this book. Like, the characters is what gives it so much life, but the whole Pokemon in space wasn't as much my favorite as the Firefly meets Mass Effect of the first one. This did fulfill a prompt though, which was Incense, and that is to read a book in your favorite genre. Sci-fi is my favorite genre. Moving into the 4.5 stars, my first one is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. This one I did read as an ARC, and I definitely need to get a physical copy at some point because 4.5 stars. There were just a couple little things that made it not a full 5, but it was so much fun to read. This one follows witches who are like sort of weather witches, and they each have powers based on the season. So there's like spring witches, winter witches, fall witches, like summer witches. I think I missed that one, but like they're all based on the season. But our main character of Clara is an ever witch, which means she has powers in every single season. And it did actually take that concept differently than I thought it was going to, in the fact that I thought she was just going to be like an all-powerful, doing everything during the different seasons type of thing, but it's not. Her powers change during different seasons, and so even though I think she is like 17 or 18 in this story and stuff, she doesn't really know how to work with her powers because it is different than everybody else. I really liked the fact that we did have some like talk about climate change and all that kind of stuff here as well, because of the fact that it is all related to like weather and natural disaster type of stuff. Like, it was such a good story, and we did have some like love and friendship, and yeah, I didn't expect to feel as heart-wrenching emotions as I actually did, but like I said, there were a couple little things that made it not a full 5 stars, and for me personally, I don't even know exactly how to specify them. There were just some tiny little things that happened or that like the characters talked about that just felt a little bit off. There was just a couple things that pulled me out of the story just a little bit, but again, I don't even necessarily know what they are or how I would describe them to you. But overall, this book was really, really nice, really well written, and I just absolutely loved our characters. Definitely need to pick up a copy for my collection, and this also did fulfill a prompt. This one did Chalice, which is a book with something elemental, and again, because of the fact that they're using a lot of weather stuff, we had a lot of water and rain and a lot of wind as well. My other 4.5 star is Well Played by Jen DeLuca. Now, let me tell you something. I went into this expecting not the worst, but a lot of my friends who loved Well Met, like I absolutely loved Well Met, 5 out of 5 stars last year when I read it, were disappointed by this book. They didn't think it lived up to Well Met. And I can see where they're coming from with this, but so I went into it with no expectations. I wasn't expecting it to be bad, but I was trying to keep my expectations really low because of the fact that I loved Well Met so much. And I was pleasantly surprised, like 4.5 stars. And I just find it so funny sometimes with expectations like that. I knew other people who have reading tastes similar to mine, absolutely loved Well Met, didn't quite love this one as much. And I'm not saying it was necessarily bad, but I think some of the reviews I've seen before were like 3 or 4 stars, just not quite as good as Well Met. And then I saw something on Twitter, I think yesterday, where somebody else talked about a book, I can't even remember what book it was, but talked about a book that I know me and a few other people that I'm friends with gave 5 stars. Like, absolutely, we loved it. And this person went into it with too high of expectations and came out as like a 3 star. So like, it's just so funny to me, but I really enjoyed this one. This one follows our main character of Stacy and her love interest of Daniel. This one does have a little bit of like mistaken identity sort of stuff, and at the beginning of the story we do have them communicating almost exclusively through email and text. Now, I will say that is not something that I'm the biggest fan of. I just don't feel as much of a connection to the characters for me personally, or that they connect to each other as easily when it is texts and emails. But we got through like all that kind of stuff by like the 3rd mark of the book, and everything else was like in person, which I loved all that kind of stuff. Also, we do get to see what happened to the couple in the first book of this series, which I did like. However, I did think it took away a little bit from Stacy's story, although I absolutely love Stacy as a character. And then one other thing that I just wanted to mention, Stacy in this story is actually plus sized. She does talk about her body a little bit negatively, just a little bit, not too much, and like, it is realistic. Some people are not going to be in love with their body, although I really do love books that also have plus size characters that don't mind their body and like live in their body pretty happily. So I didn't mind that as much, but this cover I feel doesn't do her justice. I feel like, yes, she is bigger on this cover than Emily on the first cover, and then April on the third cover, because the third book, Well Matched, is going to come out later this year, and I'm desperate for that book as well. She is technically drawn a little bit bigger than them, but the way that she speaks about her body, I expected her to be bigger. And like, going into this book, when I first saw her talking about her body, I wasn't like mad at it. Like, I love plus size rep, but I was not expecting it with this cover. She just doesn't look plus size whatsoever on this cover for me, and so I really wish that would have been shown more. But otherwise, really solid romance. I actually really enjoyed this, but it's not a full 5 stars, mostly because like that email type of thing, that's just not my thing. And also, this did cover a prompt. This one worked for Bells, which is a comfort read, and I find pretty much all romances to be comforting. And then finally, we are on to the only 5-star read I had this month, and that is going to be Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a middle grade fantasy that is just so fun. I absolutely love this. I actually talked about it as one of the happy books I read during my mid-year book freakout tag, because I just really enjoyed this. So much fun. I think I saw somewhere that it was like mentioned as like fantasy Men in Black, and it sort of is, because she gets dropped into this world and finds out that like fantasy creatures and all the stuff that's happening is part of our world. It's just sort of invisible to people that aren't in the know. And yeah, her brother has gone missing and she wants to figure out what happened to him, and so goes to this magical bureau basically and does a summer program there to try and integrate herself into this magical society. There's lots of magic and lots of competitions and trials and just stuff that I absolutely love. Oh, so much fun. I'm desperate for the second book. We have the new cover for the second book, which is again gorgeous. One thing I will say, I did actually guess part of the ending quite early in the book. However, the writing that B.B. Alston did in this twists and turns so much so that like I was questioning myself the whole time. Like, am I right? Is it this? Is it that? I was on a wild ride the whole time. So even though I did technically guess part of the ending, not even the whole ending, part of the ending, I'm not mad at it whatsoever, because it's a middle grade. I'm sure some people are going to see some of the story beats and realize what's going on, but it was so well woven together that like, yeah, I wasn't entirely sure by the time we got there until it actually got revealed. And yes, so much fun. And again, this fulfilled a prompt. It was Ancient Grimoire, which was to read a book over 400 pages, and this is just over 400 pages. And that is everything. All 13 books that I read in June. What was your favorite read in June? I would always love to hear what you guys think was your favorite, because that always gives me more books to read. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more videos. I do have videos up Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!